Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. Here are the three big stories for today. So the first is about the state of the war. The Ukrainians are clearly on their back foot. This was just 3 hours ago in CNN. Russian assault applies pressure on fragile Ukrainian defensive line in the east. Key Ukrainian defensive line on the Eastern Front appears to have partially fallen to Russian forces over the past week, according to British Defense Intelligence statement and military bloggers quoting sources on the ground. And so from Avdiivka, the yardage past Avdiivka is going to be lots of farmland, hard to defend, and they have to really ring the next cities over, which the Ukrainians are trying to defend, but Russia is barraging with artillery, and they don't have the artillery to strike back at the same rate. President Zelensky told the Washington Post on Friday that no U.S. aid means we'll go back, retreat step by step in small steps. Kyiv soldiers on the front lines are in pressing need of ammunition to fend off Russia's latest salvos, while the European Union has attempted to fill the void created by partisan bickering in Congress. So that's all what we know. But you see this in other places as well, the same story. About 1,000 kilometers of fortification rings around Kyiv. Well, why are we talking about rings around Kyiv unless you expect Kyiv to potentially be attacked in a meaningful way? About 1,000 kilometers of fortifications and 3 rings of defense line have been built around Kyiv. We have done a huge amount of work. These are about 1,000 kilometers of fortification, 3 rings. But again, why are we talking about that unless they're concerned about it? Ukraine fortifies its front lines in anticipation of new Russian offensive this summer. We're not even talking about a Ukrainian offensive or Ukrainian counteroffensive. We're talking about the Russians on the move, and it's a terrible thing to have to watch. Okay, let's shift gears to big story number 2. Let's talk about what's going on in Congress and how this logjam might be broken or whatever. Johnson says that Ukraine aid will come up right after recess and will include some innovations. Okay, so Speaker Mike Johnson said Sunday that he expects to move a package including aid for Ukraine with, quote, some important innovations, unquote, when the House returns from recess. My money is that the important innovations include turning it into a loan instead of a grant, and that's going to be significantly different, but it also unlocks, and I would prefer that they just give the aid right now, get things going, but it could unlock more things like a Lend-Lease kind of scenario. In an interview with Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy, that's on Fox News, Johnson stressed the difficult position that he's in. And he is in a difficult position, make no mistake about it, with a historically narrow House majority. But he was working throughout the current work period to come up with a package and plans to put it on the floor when the House gavels back into session. Johnson floated as examples of the possibilities of extending a loan to Ukraine. We just talked about that. Johnson also mentioned the Repo for Ukrainians Act, which would authorize the president to seize Russian sovereign assets frozen in the U.S. and give them to Ukraine to use against Russia. Very bad idea. You wouldn't think this was a good idea unless you just wanted to see Russia pay for this. But if you were just thinking in terms of the broader economic context, you would say, no, this is not a healthy thing. Will devastate faith and credit in our financial systems. It's a terrible idea, and yeah, we'll see how this goes. House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Turner, Republican of Ohio, said earlier on Sunday that he was confident that support for Ukraine would have overwhelming support when Congress returns, underscoring Johnson's pledge to make Ukraine funding a priority upon their return. The Speaker has made very clear statements that when we get back, it's top of his agenda. Okay, but we'll see how that works. He's said a lot about this for some time. Representative Don Bacon warns that it's possible Mike Johnson could lose the speakership over Ukraine aid. Now, I know some of you are like, well, good, we want him out of there anyway. Okay, but you don't want turmoil that they had for weeks after this. You want them to get the Ukraine aid through. After that, if you want to do something, that's different. But here we're talking about actually getting Ukraine aid through. Representative Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, said Sunday that it is possible Representative Johnson of Louisiana could lose his speakership if he moves to put Ukraine aid bill back on the floor. So now, this is, I think, the crux of the issue. I've been saying there's a process here, but he's also used the levers of being the speaker in order to defend himself because he wants to not be out of a job. And so the process has been muddied in multiple ways, unfortunately. It's possible, I'm not going to deny it, we have one or two people that are not on that are not team. They're not team players. They rather enjoy the limelight in social media. And of course, we're talking about folks like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is holding this sword of Damocles over Johnson's head by filing the motion to vacate. It's a very narrow majority, one-person majority, and one or two people can make us a minority, said Bacon. I've got the view, you work with a team. I don't have 100%, 80% as a Ronald Reagan rule, but we have some people that if they don't get 100%, they want to bring the house down, and that makes us dysfunctional. So the purists are the ones, well, the MAGA purists who don't want anything related to Ukraine. And that's not ultra right wing. And it's described that way sometimes, but that's not. I'm further on the right wing. These guys, I'm not sure exactly where they are, but they're not conservatives in any meaningful way, in the old Reagan kind of way. But Reagan had a rule like, look, if the bill's 80% good enough, let's go with it. and that makes sense, right? You're not going to get everything that you want. Let's go with what you can get, the majority of what you can get. And that would have been the Senate bill for my money. By the way, he wants to hold on to his job, which has been proven in public choice theory. This is James Buchanan. He won his Nobel Prize for public choice theory, which assumes that people are mainly guided by self-interest, including especially politicians, bureaucrats, and government officials who want more than anything else to keep his job. I actually saw Buchanan speak at the University of Virginia a number of years ago. It was fascinating. After he spoke, I thought it was just amazing. People would ask him questions, say, Dr. Buchanan, what do you think of this, that, or the other thing? And say, I haven't thought about it. I don't know. And then somebody else would ask him a question and say, it's a good question. I don't know. And you're thinking, like, you won a Nobel Prize, don't you have more? Like, but he was very humble. Like, he knows a lot about what he knows about, and he was willing to say, I don't know. And that's the mark of humility to look for. Okay, so Speaker Johnson doesn't want to be the shortest, Speaker of the House, the smallest tenure, but that's already gone to Theodore Medad Pomeroy, who served for 1 day, so he doesn't have to worry about that, but he still wants to hang on to his job. Okay, next. Putin signed a decree, and this is the third big story. Putin signed a decree on routine spring conscription into the army. From April 1 to July 15th, 150,000 people between the ages of 18 and 30, which was previously 27, so the age dropped down significantly, are planned to be called up for military service in Russia. That's going to be bad. But I'm trying to figure out, and this is Noel Reports, which is usually a very good source. And here we see the same thing in other places. I saw it in Anton Gerashenko and others. Here, experts have already said, like, where are these people going? Experts have already said these divisions will attack Western Europe. I don't know if that's true, but if it was, and if that was the case, the likely place to be would be the connection between, this is Russia and Kaliningrad, and Belarus, to connect here so that they have Russia somehow connected to, instead of just this isolated bit. I did this whole video about this, about the Sawalti Gap, and you can just look that up. Just type in, go to my Video Shorts Live playlist community store, and then search and put Gap, and you'll see what's the Sawalti Gap. I did this in June of 2022, I believe, and it just explains all the background of why they would want to connect this. But if they do, they're crossing Poland or Lithuania. Either way, it's a real problem. Now, that may or may not be where they're going to go, but it may just be that they're going to use this on the front line in Ukraine. That's actually a better scenario as opposed to potentially kicking off World War III by trying to connect this. This real estate was Germany, and after the war, Poland didn't want it, and Lithuania didn't want it because it wasn't Lithuanians, Poland because it wasn't Poland. Polish people there, and so now it became part of Russia after the war. So that's the background to that. Okay, last little bit that I want to show you, just because I thought this was fun. This is a soldier that was pulling down a Russian flag, and he's got himself a little trophy. So there you go, and it's off. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.